swinging the bat, and boy, they've been swinging it lately.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. My co-host is Allison Despathy. And today we have a guest in studio. We have Bill Sargent. He's a forester from southern Vermont. And I met Bill in testimony in the Environment Committee this past session. Allison, why don't you introduce Bill a little bit? You've got a little bit more background on Bill. So
okay,
take it away.
That sounds good. Thanks so much, Mike. So, Bill, thank you for being here with us
You're
today.
welcome.
We're
Both of
very
you.
glad for you to come in. Absolutely. There's lots to talk about. And Bill, I think he probably has, at least in my opinion, the best name of a book that I've ever seen. He is an author, and it is 50 Years a Dirt Forester, Always Outside and Never Behind a Desk. Yeah.
I had that was the way I introduced myself. The first time I ever testified in the legislature.
That's awesome.
On S-258.
You remember?
And way in a couple years ago.
Yep.
And I was asked by Mary Morrissey, the representative from Bennington. She said, "Bill, would you testify? You know more about the out." I said, "Mary, I've never done any of this kind of stuff before. I've always worked outside, and I'm sick of listening to paid people to come in, lobbyists. I want you to come in and speak." And I said, finally I said, "Okay, let's do it. How long do I have to get ready?" And she said 3 days.
Of course.
And I leaned on a friend of mine, Sam Lincoln, to read my my little speech. He said, "You got 10 minutes, Sarge? Pick 3 topics that you hate the most about that legislation and go for it." And he says, "Send it up to me and I'll read it and get right back to you." He says, "Don't touch a thing. Leave it alone." And Mary took me in, introduced me to the governor before my testimony. My 93-year-old dad sat with me, Mary sat with me, and
Nice.
we testified, and it was
Nice.
fun. I thought that was probably the best day of my career as a forester, but then I thought, no, the best day, it took all the days of working, 50 plus years working as a forester to get me to that day to get asked my opinion.
And that's the best
And I-
testimony when it's coming just straight from experience and wisdom that someone has from the work.
And that
Yeah.
particular bill died in committee
Good.
the next day.
Good. Bad bills die. We like when that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got a lot to talk about. One of the things, hopefully, we do find some time is, as I said earlier, I met Bill because he testified before our committee, the Environment Committee, this past February 27th. I will never forget that day.
Me either. Thank you very much, Mike.
And
some other
yeah.
representatives that were in that room with
We
you.
tipped the scales that day. That
Yes.
bill is going to come back, like I said before we started recording. That needs to have bill number H1 on it for the 2027 session.
And this
it was
is
a good bill.
H70, right.
H70,
and I will talk
including
about that
yeah.
more in my wish list. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so that one needs to definitely come back, and I've already spoken to other legislators who are chomping at the bit to bring that one back. But we're here because, or Bill, we decided to have you on because of the forest products industry and what, unfortunately, legislation over a number of years has done to the forest products industry in the state of Vermont, especially now, the highlight being the low light, the Finch closure, and what it's going
Correct.
to do to forest products industry and low grade lumber industry in this state, which is a key part of the working lands.
Yeah.
Right.
Without markets for low-grade material, you cannot manage our forests correctly.
Yeah.
And I testified that day of something that happened in my 50-year career in Bennington County. Bennington County, in my career, was completely 42% now owned by the United States Forest Service. And it created some of the same problems that I could see happening in the rest of the state. And it was a warning to everybody in that committee that day. If they proceeded with that bill, the rest of the state was going to suffer the same problems that Bennington County. There was huge economic impact. 10 major sawmills went out of business in Bennington County that were there when I graduated from UVM and moved down there to go to work. and there was 3 major furniture manufacturers, all gone in less than 50 years because the Forest Service bought the land up. It was all good to start with, but then they started cutting less and less and less timber, and to the point they're trying, but it's not much, I'll tell you that. And now this Finch closure has slammed the door. I know for a fact because I've been talking to loggers all over New York and Bennington County about this. They diverted some of their pulp that was piled up after the Finch closure, diverted to International Paper, or Silvamo, as it's called now. This past week, there was a procurement meeting at Silvamo, and they were completely 100% shut off. Other areas closer to Silvamo's mill took a big hit in price. But this is an evolving
Well,
problem.
there's a couple of things, and I listened to another interview that you did, and I know, and this is going off on a little bit of a tangent, but I don't know all the ins and outs of the corporate tentacles that are part of this.
Right.
But I'm pretty certain that the corporation that owns or that bought out Finch is actually out of, after a second deal, it's out of Canada. Is that correct?
No.
It's
out
not
of Greenwich, Connecticut. Actually.
Connecticut, that's right.
Atlas
Okay.
is not only, they do own big pulp mills in Canada.
They do. Okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
They have worldwide things they own. They own, they're big into carbon credits. We won't get down that road. But Atlas bought Finch out. Silvamo bought International Paper in Ticonderoga. So if I say International Paper, I mean Silvamo. That's an old habit.
It's one and the same.
It's one and the same. I can't break the habit.
Right.
But this is also where we start to see just this trend towards consolidation and monopoly, which continues to hurt the industry,
Absolutely.
as we're
Yep.
seeing here. And one of the things, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, it just seems that when, like you said, the federal government bought up a good percentage of Bennington,
A little bit of a monopoly.
a little
See?
bit, and then blocking access. So you're blocking access to the lands.
Well,
Is that essentially what happened?
no, I mean, it's still multi-use, other than there is the George Aiken Wilderness area that makes up 11% of the area in Bennington County. It's huge. It's not a bad thing, but it certainly changed the use of that land overnight. You can hunt, you can fish, you can trap, or you can, do all these things, but they don't want to cut timber.
So that's what
Or
I was
very little
meaning, and
timber.
that's what I should have said. So, because basically I was trying to connect. So, because logging was reduced significantly
Right.
in those lands, that was where then you said you saw the impact of the
Right.
loss of mills and
I
furniture.
Didn't finish my statement. All those mills got their logs from the old lands that are in Glastonbury and Somerset and Stamford and Reedsboro, all lands east of Bennington. That's where they got their logs. All of a sudden, in the late 1970s, early 1980s, less and less was being harvested, and that comes down from federal mandates. All those timber sales were being appealed, one right after another.
There were groups trying to stop
To
the cutting
stop the
of the
cutting.
timber. Okay.
No different than what's happening all across the state of Vermont right now.
And that's where I can't help but look at just where are the barriers that are being put in place. And it's obviously if there's more of a digital market and there's not as much, say, demand for paper for one,
Right.
but then two, you've got some of the mandates coming down which sort of block and minimize logging. And then the carbon credits, which we know want to have land sit and not be managed and not have timber be harvested. So there's all these sort of pressures coming in.
That's correct.
Okay. And this is obviously what is being
And,
experienced
you
right
know,
now.
Those 3 big furniture manufacturers that were in Bennington County all got their lumber from, hey, guess what? Those 10 sawmills that were there when I got out of UVM. The quickest way to put a sawmill out of business is to cut off their raw material.
Okay, so most of the raw material was coming
from
from
those lands.
which were bought up by the Forest Service,
Yep.
and then they slowly reduced the number
Right.
for a number of reasons. There was a reduction in the number of timber sales.
Yeah. The the furniture manufacturers had to look elsewhere to get their lumber. Further and further away, the costs were driven up, and it gradually put them out of business also. They made some beautiful furniture. Hale Company in Arlington. There was a big one in North Bennington, and the Reedsboro Chair Factory made some beautiful furniture when I first got out of school.
Okay. So
That's the background.
so we take federal lands and federal contracts for logging, and then we pile on Vermont regulations. And slowly but surely over how many years did you say? 50 years?
I got out of UVM in '74 with
Okay.
my degree in forestry and wildlife management, and the car was packed and headed for southern Vermont, and there I've stayed ever since.
Right. Okay. So we in the legislature need to look, like I said, and you keep repeating
In
it,
the green
thankfully,
books. Look in the green books. Right.
to what legislation we have that is overreaching, is
And
working to hinder our economy and our working lands.
and later on in this piece, Bill Sargent has a wish list for Mike.
Yeah, well,
And I'm going to lay it out there, and it is far-reaching. I've already been told that some of it is over the top, but that's okay. That's where
Well,
I'm going to start my fight.
my immediate question would be, is it over the top because we've come so far and it seems over the top, but we can get into that in a
little
little
later,
bit.
yeah.
I just, after seeing testimony for 2 years in the Environment Committee, it's become blatantly obvious to me that if there isn't a change of attitude in that committee with respect to land use, not just working lands or including working lands and farming as that, then the heritage and history and personality of Vermont is going to be changed forever.
Yeah.
And I really would hate to see that happen.
Right.
I don't think there's a reason for it to happen. And I think the reason for it happen has been manufactured. It's a false narrative that these industries must be changed or must die or move to another state.
And what are you seeing now with some of the loggers who were bringing their wood to Finch? How are they trying to compensate, and what's the effect?
Firewood would be the big one.
Firewood's
there's guys
happening.
piling up fire. Just whole load out here on the main street in Barry
Oh,
while
yeah.
we were waiting, and instead of I know the fellow well that was trucking it. Instead of being cut for pulp, it was cut for firewood. Little different lengths, little different mix of product.
Right.
So they're switching. They can't from this area up here. They would have trucked it probably to International Paper, but they're in the zone that they were shut off as of Friday. No more.
Okay.
0. So, and that's happening all over the state of Vermont. Hemlock is that's a no-go from hemlock pulp. There is no market for it left in the state of Vermont.
Wow.
None.
Now,
What was
tell me,
that?
what was
Yeah.
hemlock pulp primarily used for?
Lower grade papers.
Lower grade paper. Okay.
Will it come back? I'd like to think so. Maybe not at Finch, maybe at International Paper at some point. And I'm just guessing. That's just a semi-educated guess.
Is there any other use for it, or can
No.
it be used for pellets, or
No.
No. So it's
No,
usually
it's
like a
really-
softwood pellet is usually pine.
It's high in moisture.
Okay.
Tough to dry in a pellet form.
Okay.
Okay.
You can dry pine. I don't know what the difference is, but it's big, quicker. So you use less energy, less byproducts to dry it.
Okay. So there really was a limited market for
it
that.
was, and hemlock is funny. You can make some beautiful timbers for post and beam stuff like that.
Yes.
but it separates on the site. You get a windy site. You get a site that's faced in the wrong direction. It separates on the growth rings real easy. It's called shake,
Oh, okay.
and you make yourself an 8x8 for your beautiful cabin, and it falls right apart.
Oh goodness.
Okay.
Yeah.
A 2x6 You can make some nice dimensional lumber. When I
Right.
was associated with Burke Lumber, we did it. But you had to be very careful about the log that you
Yeah.
started with.
Okay. Well, we're coming to the end of our first segment here, ladies and gentlemen. We will be back with our guest, Bill Sargent, after a few minutes here. You're listening to Right Side Up.
And then we definitely need to get to the solution. So if you think that there's enough.
Good.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Taglavia. My co-host is Allison Despathi. And our guest in studio today is Bill Sargent, a forester from Southern Vermont who I met when he testified in the Environment Committee in the State House. So where are we going to go from here? I think we should start talking about what we think might be some solutions, so that our forest products industry is not relegated to museums and history books, because I'd hate for that to happen.
Yes.
So
Here we go.
here we go.
This segment really isn't about the Finch closure.
No.
That was a change in marketplace, a change in papers.
Yep,
And
yep.
It was going to happen. I predicted it would happen 10 years ago. The closure was a symptom of a much bigger problem. It took 50 years to create it. There's no quick fix out there. There's no silver bullet. We need to create conditions that will allow us to build for the future. That was my aha moment as a writer this morning at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
I said, what are we going to talk about up there? And that was my big, if we can get this apart in the theme of today's show, that's what I wanted to do. The solutions can't be good for just the Vermont forest products industry. They got to be good for the whole state.
Absolutely. I agree with that. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, that's an easy one. I'm going to throw a few of my pet peeves and solutions to let everybody think about. I'm going to start with a whole list I'm going to ask state legislators.
Good.
Because without the changes that I'm asking for, we're going nowhere.
Right. Right.
And we're doomed to failure. They're complementary to Vermont, to the ag side of this equation. What's good for one's good for the other. One of my most controversial things, and something that we've already talked in studio about today, is enough of the 30 by 30 and the 50 by 50 business.
Right. That
I've
was
had
the
enough.
Act 59. Right.
Act 59.
Yes.
Stop the conserving and protection parade. Some people, I'm on the wrong side of it with some people, but
Well, that has been, like you said, that has been in the pike for a very long time, since probably the mid 2000s. And people think that this just happened in 2023, 2024. That was what happened in 2023 and 2024 session, that biennium, was just the supermajority taking advantage of the situation they had to steamroll legislation through that a lot of people had no taste for. And the override of the governor was just a supermajority saying, this is what we want. We're not interested in what you want. We're not interested in what other legislators have on the wall to help solve problems. And like we had in the Environment Committee in February, where the consideration of H70, current use land, and there is some changes you and I have talked about, other people have talked about that they want. But the current use program has existed, I think, since 1979.
Yep.
And it has done an excellent job, and we should be telling not just the rest of the country, but the rest of the world, this is how it's done.
Right.
this worked.
It worked.
We are
And
very good stewards here in Vermont. We
the-
take good care.
The stewards in the current use program need to get their the
Credit.
credit
Right.
that they are overdue now, and including it in the 30 by 30
And I would just
is
add
the
to
first
that.
step.
That's the
Right.
first step.
We
First
already
step.
have 27% of our lands in Vermont permanently conserved.
That pushes
And-
us right over the top.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
And
So
it
that's
gives
a
us-
big first step,
It
Bill.
gives us a reason to take a deep breath and then take a good look at our leisure at lands that are really truly critical that maybe we haven't seen or paid attention to yet that should be added to some sort of a preservation program.
And even just
But-
reevaluating
yeah.
our current use program and what's working or
yes,
not working.
absolutely.
that's
Right.
on my list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so let's hear it, Bill.
That's number 2 on the list. is
Good. What do you got?
Stop the sale of carbon credits on lands in current use.
Yes.
And
And to me, that sounds like double dipping. And it's also, if you look at, like you were stating earlier, most of those current use contracts include a 10-year forestry plan, which includes harvest.
that's right.
So you can't double dip, and you can't have it both ways. It's either passive or it's working
There we go.
lands.
It's either active or passive forest management. Which one do you want?
And do you want to explain that a little bit for listeners?
Active forest management, current use, you're working all the time. Not all the time, not every year.
No.
And jumping back to the Finch thing a little tiny bit here, I'm not as upset or excited about the fact we can't cut as much under current use plans right away. 5 or 6 years aren't going to make any difference in this whole picture. The wood's still going to continue to grow. We'll catch up. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But that's very under current use. It's very active forest management. I'm going to ask that. Here's another one I'm going to cross. Get on the wrong side of some people here. I'd like to see inspections done, cursory inspections done on a yearly basis by the county foresters, so that if there's a piece of that land that was supposed to have work done on it, I want to know it was done. Not, I've been and I've talked to so many foresters. Hey, they say to the landowner, you've got stand such and such up in the back corner, this due to have a thinning done to it. I don't want to touch it, is their answer. Even though it's written into their management plan, even though they've taken the tax stuff, they push that forester off. And the forester says, you're due to get it. I'll get a different forester.
And this is where it's just understanding what the current use program
It-
is and
you've
supposed
made
to
a
be.
promise.
And you are getting tax breaks
You're
because
getting-
of that promise.
That's correct.
Right.
I'd like to, it's going to make a big workload, supposedly. But I think it needs to be done.
Well, you know, one of those things that I don't know that it needs to be on a yearly basis. There
Yeah.
are plenty of foresters out there that know which land is actually in active management and which land isn't. And it would probably be very easy to thin out and figure
can-
out which ones
That's right.
need to be addressed and inspected, or somebody needs to be sent a letter say, hey, you're supposed to be in active management. You signed this contract. What's going to happen?
And this
Pick
is where
a-
it just
pick a
seems
section.
like, with Bill, what you're saying, two things. One, obviously, if your land is in active management through current use, then it should absolutely not also be in the carbon credit
That's
program,
right.
which is the opposite of that. And the other thing that we have to think about is current use and working lands that serves Vermont. It serves our environment here. It serves Vermonters. When you have a carbon credit program, you typically have high level international investors, like say Blue Source, who bought up a lot of land in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire.
Atlas that owns Finch
Right.
is a
Massive
big,
carbon
massive
credit.
carbon credit company.
Right. And
Well,
this is where they
that's
come
what
in.
makes me,
And
you
even
know,
I mean, in our investigative reporting I've done with Lexi Thompson, we tripped over the fact that a big chunk of Vermont's retirement money, teachers,
the pension funds.
pension funds, are
Right.
invested through Atlas.
Right.
Nothing wrong with it. It's just
How does it affect Vermont?
how does it affect Vermont?
Right. And that's the other thing I think we need to think about is just the carbon credit sort of scheme, really scam, in my opinion, is that, then you have Amazon, JP Morgan, all these sort of big corporations saying, well, we do this sort of practice and this works, so we're going to just buy these carbon offsets to pretend we didn't do it. So, like, what sort of system are we setting up at the expense of our state, our people, our environment, and our industries?
For Vermont Investigative wrote a really nice piece explaining this carbon credit thing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought in a way that really stood out to me. And she might have yelled at me just a little teeny bit. I turned it into a joke. We don't need to hear Bill's joke that he writes at 4 a.m.
Right.
that explains in about 3 sentences what carbon credits mean.
Right.
But
We'll just call it
skip
sort of
over.
scam, right?
Yes,
But Bill is also referencing Lexi Thompson, who
Right.
writes Vermont Investigative, for anyone who does want to dig a little deeper.
Yeah, she's
into trying to
on
understand
both
this.
Facebook and she publishes on Substack.
Yes,
correct.
yes.
Yeah.
So what else do you have on your list, Bill?
let's see here. I'd like to follow New Hampshire's lead on the sale of carbon credits and ban them all on state lands.
Yes.
Yeah.
New Hampshire passed some legislation this past session that banned the sale of carbon credits on their state lands.
You're referring to, if I can interrupt for a second,
bet.
HB 123 in the 2025 session and HB 1205 in the 2026 session.
Correct.
They address carbon sequestration, forest carbon offset / credit programs on New Hampshire forest lands with a focus on protecting local timber tax revenues, the logging industry, traditional forest management, and public control of taxpayer purchased lands. Both became law under Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte, and I could go on, but I'll leave
Excellent.
it to you.
Yes.
And use that as a model.
Exactly.
I think it's a great idea. I
And
read through
push
some of it,
forward
and it's
with
yes.
And let's see, else is on my magic list here.
And I would say, just back to the New Hampshire situation, the town of Pittsburgh was really struggling because of how it was going to affect their loggers, their logging industry, the taxes.
Well, the
that
tax
they would
base,
get
our
from
grand
it.
list, I'm wondering how that's going to affect the grand list, especially of some of these smaller towns.
That's right.
And that's where we should get ahead of this. Like, we should definitely be looking at New Hampshire to avoid a worse situation in Vermont.
That's right.
Yes.
And I would like you talked about possibly pellet mills. The firewood, what I'm worried about with the firewood industry that we have is now we're going to have people who were not shipping firewood. Now they're all of a sudden competing with other guys who've already been making it. So what's that's going to do to the price of firewood?
Well, it's going to drive it down some, which is
drive it
okay
down.
for the consumer in
I
the
know,
short
right?
term. But
Yes.
it's going to force some people out of the business
Yeah.
that you think it's great today, but 5 years from now,
Right.
when you can't buy that load of firewood you need to heat your house,
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I see problems. And
That's the long-term
That's the
effects that I'm
long-term.
concerned about, and it's if we cannot survive in this state, and I don't think too many people realize this. We only have a service economy and a tourist economy, really. We've made our green book so heavy with regulation that we don't have the industry, the production economy that we need to be able to survive the dips in the economy. Because if there's a dip either nationally or worldwide in an economy so bad that people aren't spending money, then our tourist economy and our service economy is going to tank. And we are on the edge anyway. We need to be thinking about manufacturing. And I am completely in favor of bringing back our working lands industries, sawmills, lumber mills. Why can't we, if we want to grow our food here, why don't we grow our timber for the homes that
and
we want to
building.
build?
Right.
Instead of shipping across borders, even in New York or New Hampshire, forget Canada, keep it inside the borders, have it leave the forest, as timber, and go back and be sold as dimensional lumber locally. Wouldn't
But
that
the
be
sawmills
great?
ever compete?
we don't have the infrastructure to do it.
Oh, I
Right.
know. It's
We've
going to need to
lost
be
it.
built back.
Right.
Dimensional lumber lost their biggest producer in the early 1990s, which was Burke Lumber.
Okay.
Up in West Burke, Vermont. They made spruce and fir like probably the hardest working crew I ever worked with in
Wow.
my 50-something year career. Those guys could work. They could make dimensional lumber. I left the company to do I was a consultant there. I moved on to another consulting project. They filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy. But they tried to do some major overhauls to the mill, and it was going to change the footprint. And it brings me to my next subject,
Act
which is Act
250.
250. Act 250 was part of the reason that shot those plans down.
Right.
The loss of 75 to 100 employees, the loss of one of the biggest mills in the biggest producing mill, and there was problems with finding enough spruce and fir dimensional. I was doing part of my consulting work, I was doing some tests on hemlock, believe it or not,
There you
and
go.
red pine. And it's possible to make dimensional lumber out of red pine and hemlock.
Right.
It was going to take dry kilns to do it.
So there was another investment,
so
basically.
there was a huge investment that was
Right.
going to be. It was going to change the whole way that mill was set up, and they
So-
were getting so much.
All right.
Act
We're going to
two-
need to
Oh, we'll come
continue this.
back for-
Yeah, we've
Oh,
come
boy.
to the end of another one already. Ladies and
I know,
gentlemen,
it goes quick.
yeah, you're listening to Right Side Up. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Right Side Up. My name is Mike Tagliavia. My co-host is Allison Despathi, and our in-studio guest today is Bill Sargent. Before we get back into our discussion, rightside-up-radio@gmail.com if you'd like to shoot us an email, give us a little bit of input. If for some reason you cannot catch us on WNTK Radio, go to WNTK.com, find the podcast button, click on it, and scroll down to any number of Right Side Up episodes that you can listen to any day, time of the day or night, and you can share them with a friend as well. You can find us on 802 Scoop YouTube and 802 Scoop Facebook, and you can also find us on granitegrok.com. Okay, so in this last segment, I think we were talking about some of the solutions that you had in mind that you would like to see the legislature consider to try to, or definitely revive our wood products industry, which would definitely be a jumpstart to our economy across the state, in my opinion. So, what other solutions?
We talked very briefly, or started to talk about Act 250.
Yes.
I'd like to see. I don't want to see a repeal of Act 250. There's some good parts of it. I'd
Yeah.
like to see Act 250 rewritten to help not just the forest industry business, but business, period.
Oh, yeah.
You
You're
know,
absolutely correct.
It costs so much money, and we've lost business. If we're going to make some changes on individual things to help the forest products industry, we cannot do them without some changes to Act 250.
And I also just want to say in there, because I think a lot of times, I mean, Act 250 is obviously really important for that large scale, impactful commercial development. But a lot of times, Act 250 actually gets blamed for other permits. And this is where we need to dig in, because Agency of Transportation, Agency of Natural Resources, I mean, Mike, in committee,
Yes.
you saw the agency itself was trying to make some changes. And
Yes,
they were fought
A&R.
by the legislature, by, Chair Amy Sheldon.
Well,
and this
yeah.
is where there are some things that could be changed for other permitting that a lot of times Act 250 gets blamed for. So I think, digging in, but even just as an example, like the data center bill, I think many legislators started to understand, like, whoa, Act 250 is actually really important.
That's right.
We just want to make sure it's not weaponized against working lands and our small businesses, and it's used properly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The bill you're talking about with respect to Agency of Natural Resources trying to streamline some things.
Yes.
That was, I believe it was H632. And one of the reasons that bill died was because the majority did not, namely in my committee, did not want to see an amendment be attached to that bill with respect to the governor's executive order reducing the Class 2 wetland buffer.
Right.
So that was the whole reason. It passed out of our committee favorably and then disappeared into the ozone, and somebody asked about it, and I started asking one morning before we went into committee or out onto the floor, and lo and behold, me being new at this, I trusted it was just going to go through the process. It passed out of our committee, but it got held up in another committee because there was a little, tug on the shoulder and, hey, leave this one alone, don't do anything with it, and because nobody else was trying to shepherd it along, before we knew it, there was nothing we could do to get it over the finish line. And it was not a bad bill.
That's where it seems like we just need an understanding of what Act 250 is, where it came from, where it's appropriate, and where there might need to be some shifts.
Yeah.
So you're obviously identifying.
Yeah.
Let's switch off topic.
Yeah.
Let's
Sure.
get off Act 250 because
It's a big can of
It's a
worms.
big one.
It's a big one.
I'm gonna offer a really, really easy one for you.
You haven't spent a lot of time in the State House, have you?
Yeah. This one is a little easy. I'm going to delve into my wife's education side of it.
Here we go.
Bit. Here we
That's
go.
right, because she's a retired teacher.
She's a retired teacher.
Yeah.
But this one's real easy, relatively. The forest products industry has trouble hiring good employees. Period.
Yeah.
I'd like everybody to encourage and promote vocational schools.
Yeah.
CTEs. I'm 100% with you.
100%.
Absolutely.
I spent some time at the one at Mount Anthony in Bennington this year, and just in the forestry program, they read my book, believe it or not.
That's great. Nice.
And I was so impressed with those juniors and seniors, and unfortunately, that teacher's not coming back. Money, he was doing a world of good with a bunch of young fellows in there, and we talked about my book one day in there, and he says, I said to the teachers, or I said to the students, I said, I bet I could get a bunch of your legislators in here to talk about the forest products industry, your problems, what you see, what you'd like to do, why you're here. And they said, no, they don't care about us, Mr. Sargent. And I says, I'll bet you lunch for everybody in this room, I could get 8 or 9 legislators in here with your teacher, and we'll have a question and answer till we get thrown out of the place.
Nice.
And so I was the moderator. I called up all the Bennington County legislators, and I didn't have to buy lunch.
They got
showed
you
up.
covered.
They got me covered. And it was an eye-opener. All but 2 of those legislators had never set foot in a CTE before. And so everybody in the whole school was excited about it because administration came down, and they took us on a tour of all the other programs and spent way over a half a day. They have needs. They have things they need. Just for the forestry program, you can't learn on heavy equipment without the heavy equipment. You would think.
Right.
You would think. But it's interesting, some of the programs that are written out, computer programs and things that'll teach you how to run big processors. And
So basically trying to really ensure that the education is happening for this industry in the
Yep.
schools, the pipeline is there.
That's right.
That the kids and teachers are being supported in the program,
we're going to
right?
have a glitch of 5 to 10 years while no matter if I get all my other wishes tomorrow, we know that's not going to happen, but I'm going to keep trying.
Yep.
We're going to have a glitch, and we got to be able to replace those people that are going to drop by the wayside. And this is the best place I've seen to have it
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money. I know they voted on one right here in Barrie, I believe, in this last.
Yeah, they were trying to
Yeah,
build a
there was
new
a-
one.
They
Yeah,
were trying
right.
to build a new one, and
Right.
it crashed and burned.
Well, they're so popular. A lot of students want to go there, and some of them are
Right.
so full. And this is where it's just like the trades, like electrician, plumbers, carpenters.
There
We
was-
need foresters. We need loggers.
Well,
we need.
All those programs were there, from nursing to building trades to working on cars. I mean, I couldn't believe some of the stuff they were doing in that automotive shop that day.
It's
they had an
amazing.
engine out of an old junk car, and they're tearing it all. They're going at it like crazy. All stuff that they were going to get. Those guys were going to get a job. There was 3 or 4 kids in that forestry program, seniors, that I would have hired on the spot if they walked in and asked me for a job. Not only were they getting good forestry background, they're coming out of there with their Class B CDL license. All stuff, it ensures of them a job.
And this goes back to Mike. I just can't help but think like your education work that you do in the State House with trying to ensure that students have paths and options and these other schools
Yeah.
are continue to really be supported.
Yeah,
Yes.
we do need that as an option, obviously, because of the age gap we have.
Yep.
The, like you said, the 5 or 6 year.
It's something that's
Dead
not going to
zone
happen. There's
that
a
we're
dead
gonna
zone
have,
that's
yeah.
going
Right.
to happen.
Right.
So, but
What a,
options in education is a big deal for me.
Yeah.
Life is all about the options, right? We walk. I use this analogy all the time. You walk into a hardware store or a grocery store, you've got all kinds of options. So you should have those similar options in education, and we have let that fall by the wayside, I think, for far too long. And we're going to see in the next couple of years, we're going to be paying for that.
there was a couple of those kids that had my wife in 4th grade.
Oh, that's
Oh, really?
great. That's
Yeah.
great.
And I said, how many of you gentlemen in here had Mrs. Sargent in 4th grade? And a couple hands went. I said, how many of you ever heard of the word consequences?
Yeah.
And 2 of them raised their hands again. And one of them says, if it hadn't been for Mrs. Sargent keeping me in for recess and making me suffer the consequences of what I did wrong, I wouldn't be sitting here today.
That's amazing.
Well,
And-
I'm glad you brought this up. This show is not really about public safety, but consequences
that's-
need to be taken into consideration.
Yeah.
with
My
respect
favorite
to
word.
public
That's Sherry's
safety.
favorite word, and I
Yes.
use it in every speaking engagement. For
Yeah.
everything we do or don't do,
Yeah, there are
from here
consequences.
on out, there's going to be consequences.
That's
and
the
I talked
bottom
about
line.
the consequences of what happened in Bennington County that day in your environmental committee.
Yeah.
And I've been harping and talking all over the state about the same thing.
You'd
Consequences.
think that this would be a very straightforward act that the legislature could really focus on and make happen. So that is a huge one to keep the pipeline going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else do you have, Bill?
Oh, the magic list is going to double clutch here and talk about we need more markets for low grade material, obviously.
Now, the low grade, I'm not familiar. I did there was a large group of us did a tour of the pellet plant
Yeah,
down in,
in
what is it,
Clarendon.
Clarendon? Is low grade what goes to those plants?
That's right.
Okay.
That one you visited utilized low grade pine.
Mm-hmm.
That without that market would get left in the woods.
Okay.
Silvamo, International Paper, also uses that at certain times when they need it for their
Okay.
their product. But it's a very limited. And when that plant's going, could we make pellets out of the same stuff, Finch? Yes,
Okay.
we could. But it would be, and there's some new pellet. We've had pellet plants, other pellet plants. There's new technology evolving every day. Lots and lots and lots of money. There's cogeneration plants. We've got 2 in state, 2 big ones in state right now, relatively big ones. Could we support more? Probably. But without Act 250 changes, it's never going to happen.
It's not just Act 250.
No, it's
There
not.
is a movement to have wood products as a fuel, not considered green.
Yeah, I know.
It's too polluting. But like you said, we have technology that has made it far cleaner than years past.
Part of-
And we need to have options in our fuel industries.
Or there will be consequences.
The
Or they will-
consequence.
exactly.
I can't help but think to myself also, it seems like many of the schools in Vermont went to sort of a wood pellet heating system.
Mount Anthony,
Right, and that's
uses
where
chips.
where I just wonder if there was an in-state facility, if there was their own trucking, you could probably compete on the market.
Those chips come from Vermont.
They
right
do
now.
already.
They do already.
Okay, that's good. Yep.
Bennington College
Right.
has heats their complex with wood.
Okay.
Again, seasonal. Both of them. It's seasonal, but it's a little piece of the puzzle.
And does that come from
right.
Vermont also? Do you
I
know?
won't speak for that.
Okay, we're not sure. Yeah.
I have my at times.
Okay.
We'll just leave it at times.
Yeah, because that's what I'm just thinking. Like again, these sort of
Realize
in-state
too that
markets.
we're sitting on the corner of the tri-state.
Right.
Yes.
And those chip contracts are generally let to huge suppliers that are often out of state.
Okay.
Do they have to be? No.
Right.
But they have to. But if Bennington College needs X number of loads of chips to heat that plant in the middle of January, and all of a sudden the temperature drops down colder, and they're going to use 2 more trailer loads, you have to be able to find them.
Right.
And that's the good thing about going with some of these big chip suppliers. If they have to go to New Hampshire to go get the chips, they go get them.
Right.
If they go to Connecticut, they have to go to Connecticut they go out, they get on the phone, they buy the chips elsewhere.
But this is definitely a possible path. It's just a
absolutely.
little bit down the road, like you've said.
I'd
It
love
would
to
just
see
be
more of those types of facilities used. Middlebury College, I believe, uses chips.
Yes, they do.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
you
Okay.
know. Does UVM use any chips?
I don't know. It's a good question.
I don't know.
They
think so.
don't?
I
Okay.
don't think so, but
Okay.
Well,
correct me if
doesn't
I'm wrong.
Montpelier have a huge chip plant? Doesn't
think Montpelier-
Burlington have a
yeah.
chip plant?
Yeah.
And we have one that just recently came back online in Groton, right? Isn't it
the
in the
Rygate?
process?
Oh, right.
Rygate?
It's Rygate and
Okay.
McNeil, Bennington, or
Okay.
Burlington Electric. I'm
And
sorry.
is that one
Okay.
sort of, does it sustain itself or is it dependent on subsidies? Do you know, like,
I
are
don't
they
know
viable?
I don't know. How
I don't
that
either.
works.
Yeah.
And I'm far enough away in southwestern Vermont. Those 2 particular plants never affected me.
Yes.
All
down
right.
there.
Well, unfortunately,
ran
ladies
that
and
out.
gentlemen, we
Thank
have
you so
run out
much
of
for
time.
being here,
Yes,
Bill.
Thank
Thank you
so much.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So remember, ladies and gentlemen, stay safe, stay informed, listen to Right Side Up.